Welcome to Replenish Your Life, a space to discover how to embody your purpose, strengthen your intuition, and manifest who you truly are. I'm Lucy.
And I'm Morgan.
And we hope you're ready to embrace your divine design and replenish your life.
In today's episode, we're chatting to Nicola Humber. Nicola is the author of Heal Your Inner Good Girl, Unbound, and the recently released Unbound Writing. She's also the founder of the Unbound Press, a soul-led publishing imprint for unbound women. After playing the archetypal good girl up until her mid-30s, Nicola left her proper job in finance to retrain as a coach and hypnotherapist, and this leap of faith led her to what she does now. Activating recovering good girls to embrace their so-called imperfections and shake off the tyranny of shoulds so they can be their fullest, freest, most magnificent self. Nicola helps women to write the book their unbound self is calling them to write, whilst growing a community of soul family, readers, and clients. She's originally from Southampton in the UK, but is now based in upstate New York. Hi, Nicola. Welcome. It's so wonderful to have you here. One of the things that I really love about your presence and the work that you're creating in the world is just the beautiful way that you hold such deeply magical space for women to be who they truly are and to kind of tap into their true creative expression through writing. So such an honor to have you here. Thank you for being here with us.
Oh, thank you to both of you for inviting me.
So let's get into the conversation. I you're the author of two books, Heal Your Inner Good Girl and Unbound. And you're also the owner of the Unbound Press publishing company, which I love this. It's a soul-led publishing imprint for unbound women. Mm-hmm. And we really want to hear from you. What was life like before that? And can you tell us a little bit more about what your journey looked like to get here to this place?
I mean, there's different layers to that because, if we go kind of right back, I think it was 2008, 2009, I was, at the beginning of 2009, I was still working in finance, for right up until my mid to late 30s. That's what I did. I was a financial advisor, financial planner, which is like really strange to look back on now. Completely different, feels like a completely different lifetime. But that's what I was doing. I was going into an office every day, working, pretty much 9 to 5, and had no clue really what I really wanted to do with my life. I'd been following this path, which I kind of call the good girl path, doing what I thought was expected of me in life, having a good education, getting a proper job, one with a really clear career path that I could follow, buying a property, like all of these things. Mm-hmm. But inside, I always knew there was something missing, but I had no clue what that was. And it was around the time of the financial crisis of 2008 and into 2009. I'd moved to another company. I'd moved from a company where it was, all of the other financial advisors were men. It was very masculine. Mm-hmm. And moved to a company where it was run by women. And I thought, well, maybe that's the change that I need. But very soon I recognised, no, it wasn't. It's the actual work that I just can't do it anymore. Pretty much on the first day. Actually, the first day I started there was like when the whole financial crisis first hit. I remember my first day in the office and everything was going crazy. Wow. Which should have been a sign for me. But it was pretty soon after that I was like, actually, I can't do this anymore. I just cannot be going to work every day and sitting in this office and doing work that doesn't light me up. And so I was asking the question that what can I do? with my life, just sending that out there. And it was actually when I was at a health spa with my sister one weekend, I saw a demonstration by a hypnotherapist, and I'd never had hypnotherapy before, never even really thought about it. But there was something about this woman and the way she was speaking about the subconscious and these different kind of patterns that we can pick up, and how the words that we use are really important. The words that are used kind of around us is so important. And I just knew in that moment that that's what I was meant to do. So I made this completely intuitive, kind of instinctive decision to leave my job in finance and retrain as a hypnotherapist and a coach. And that's kind of been a 10-year, just over 10-year journey to where I am now. But I never expected that I'd be doing this.
Right.
Being an author and running a publishing company. Yeah, when I started.
That's incredible.
Wow. Yeah, that's such an incredible story. And but how amazing to have all these different experiences. And you know, do those, I'm assuming that those experiences can help you also in your writing and in creative expression. And you know, how would one use those experiences to really, like, good or bad, to really enrich their creative process, or to, you know, to help them to express themselves?
You know, really, that's my past experiences have provided like the fuel for everything I do now. I spent so long kind of walking this path and living this life that it wasn't really mine. It was like this kind of constructed idea of what I felt I should be doing. Just provides so much inspiration for me in my writing, and also helps me to connect with my reader, who may be in a place where, you know, she is still kind of going into that office every day or living her life. Sometimes it can be more subtle than that. We just know that we're not quite showing up in, you know, in our truth. So I actually find with writing that it's the experiences that we have, whether they're kind of from way in the past or more recent, that do feel more challenging, are actually the ones that are really juicy when it comes to writing. Like, you know, you can balance it out with like all the wonderful stuff and the magical stuff that's happening. But it's, you know, those challenging moments and those moments when we felt vulnerable and lost that can be most powerful when we share them. Yeah.
You know, you talk about connecting with your reader in that way. And that's one of the things that I find I really resonate with your work, Nicola, and what you talk about and what you write about is that the thing you talk about being a recovering or a recovered people pleaser, you know, that's something that I really resonate with. And it's something that I've had to work very, very hard at. And I see it reflected in a lot of the client work that I do. So I'm really interested in hearing more about that process for you. Like, what did it look like for you to stop being a people pleaser?
I wouldn't say I'm completely recovered from that.
Yeah.
I would definitely say it's a process.
Same.
Because, you know, it's so ingrained into us, you know, particularly as women, that when we're little girls, it's like, well, this is what we need to do. We need to please others. We need to put other people's needs above our own. And I still find myself doing that from time to time, or even regularly. I'm much more, I mean, the difference is I'm much more able to kind of catch myself doing it now.
Right.
Like, even if it's in the moment where I'll say yes to something and I'm like, oh, why did I do that? Or just, you know, find myself doing something because I feel I should, rather than because it's something that I really want to do. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't happen, probably on a daily basis, but I notice it. And also I've become better at kind of allowing myself some space. So if somebody asks me something or I have a decision to make, rather than kind of jumping into it, I'll just kind of leave a bit of space so that I actually have the time to feel into it, you know, how it feels for me. And for me, it's a really kind of felt sense. It's, the decision doesn't come from kind of up in the head. It has to come, my body lets me know whether it's something I really want to do, or whether I'm just doing it to please others. Yeah.
That's really powerful. Yeah.
Yeah. I've also been practicing something similar of like just like giving myself that space to respond to any, for listeners, anyone listening who is familiar with human design, the emotional authority, it's called, is a good, that suggests, having an emotional authority suggests that you wait to respond. Give yourself at least 24 to 48 hours. And I've really found that helpful. That's what you're explaining, like giving ourselves the space to feel into it, or whatever, we just to sit with it. And I feel it comes like from much more powerful place, the decision, or however you decide to proceed. Yeah. So what would you say to, okay, asking for a friend. So I've run into this thing where I would write and everything just feels like total garbage, basically. That's a bit harsh maybe, but just not good or not good enough. Maybe that goes back to the, you know, sort of that good girl persona and that people pleaser. You know, what would you say to listeners that are having sort of that struggle with writing and allowing that stuff to come out? And
I mean, I would say first and foremost, everyone experiences that very regularly when you're writing, and particularly like if you've committed to writing a book, because then it kind of feels like the stakes are higher in some way, and that you've got to reach this kind of standards that only special people can reach. I've certainly experienced that. I mean, I've just handed in quite recently the manuscript for my third book. And I woke up like in the middle of the night after handing it in, just going, oh my goodness, what if it is just complete rubbish? You know, when no one gets it.
Oh no.
Yeah, and this comes up all the time in the women that I work with. Like, this is a regular thing. It's like, it just feels like what I'm writing is just no good, or it's not good enough. So I think to recognize that it happens for everyone is really powerful, because then it's not such a personal thing.
Yeah.
But that's why I'm such a believer in writing in community and sharing your writing as you go, which can feel challenging, particularly you know, when you're having these moments of doubt. But even if you can just put a small piece of it out there, or share it with someone, you know, like a trusted friend, then you're going to have it reflected back to you that actually, and this happens pretty much like all of the time, that actually it's not rubbish. That's just a judgment that we've made about it. And maybe it's not coming through in the way you expected. And sometimes it feels like maybe what's coming through you, it doesn't make sense. But when you share it, it resonates with other people. So that's what I believe that's the most powerful thing, rather than just kind of holding yourself away for weeks, months on end, and just writing for yourself, and just having to be stuck with those mind gremlins. Sharing it in some ways really powerful.
That is really powerful. I love that. I mean, I think, you know, for me, hearing what you say, I know that one of the biggest hurdles that I face when I do writing or any kind of creative expression, because I honestly feel, Nicola, that the work that you do is about like women expressing themselves in life as well as in their writing, right? So I feel like one of the main hurdles that I face is that self-editing, you know, and I'm quite sharp with that. So like I edit myself as I go along, which means that I never actually end up expressing what's in my soul. It's just a well-crafted paragraph, you know? I guess that's, I mean, I imagine that must be something you see a lot with the people that you work with. And so tell us a little bit more about some of the other hurdles that people come to you with that stop them from like living a fully expressed life.
Yeah, I mean, I think you're right in saying that it's about the writing, but the impact of it is much kind of broader than that. And really that's what I'm interested in, like, you know, women being fully expressed. And one of my clients said the other day, she said, oh, what I've recognized is like this whole book writing process is just one of like creating self-trust, like learning to trust yourself.
Beautiful.
And this is a big part of it. This is why we edit ourselves, like, on the page and also in our lives, you know, for what we say or the choices we make. Because I feel we've lost that sense of self-trust. So you can almost see it as an experiment of like, you know, kind of playing with this idea of actually trusting what's coming through without editing it. It's a huge piece. I mean, I certainly encourage the writers that I work with, certainly at the beginning of the process, just allow it to come and don't be tempted to edit it. And for me, it helps like to handwrite. When I'm handwriting, I'm much less likely to edit it. That's just a practical thing. Whereas when you're typing it, it's so much easier to kind of be going back and changing pieces. But it's a completely different, when you're in editing mode, it's a completely different state to actually creation and allowing what wants to come through. So you don't really want to mix those two states up. So that comes out a lot. There's also this idea that it's self-indulgent to be sharing our stories. It's like it's okay to share information or knowledge, you know, or kind of like how to and tips and those kind of things. But when it actually comes to sharing our own personal experiences, oh no, who would want to read about that? You know, I'm just kind of being self-indulgent. That's, you know, that's the most compelling piece. That's what we want to hear. That's what your reader, that's what your audience want to hear. So it's kind of moving through that and recognizing the power of our own stories. Yeah, that's a huge piece.
And so do you find that, you know, so I'm I guess more like I identify as the INFJ, which is a more introverted type on the Myers-Briggs. And so do you find, like, sometimes I find it's hard to share a personal story. So what would you say to people that are sort of having a hard time to sharing that the personal aspect? Like, do you know, would you change names and details, or is it kind of maybe dilutes it a bit, your story? But yeah, anyways, can you speak to that? Or introvert? Yeah.
I mean, I'm an introvert as well, so I get that completely.
Yay, introverts unite.
Yay.
I'm amazed that we're all talking to each other.
Yeah, it's happening. And it's so, like, this has absolutely been a process for me. When I first started blogging, when I first started my hypnotherapy practice, it was very much kind of, you know, professional and just like sharing information. And I was actually trained, because I've done counselling training as well, not to share kind of my personal stories or experiences. It's like, no, you don't do that. So it's been a big shift for me to start bringing my stories through. I always say, and this counts for anything you find challenging in your writing, if there's something coming up for you around it, if it's like, oh, I feel kind of uncomfortable about sharing this story, or I'm wondering if there's any value in it, to acknowledge that on the page as you're writing it. So if you're creating something to share, you know, actually say, oh, I feel a bit kind of strange, or this feels quite challenging for me to share because I'm an introvert and it doesn't come naturally to me to share my story. There's something about doing that and acknowledging what's coming up that can create a shift and that open up the space for us to actually allow our story out into the world. So I think that's the most powerful thing that you can do. And also to recognize that, like, this is a practice. So it probably won't feel like completely comfortable initially. You can start by sharing small elements of your story, and build up to sharing something that maybe feels more vulnerable. You know, I have worked with writers where, in addition to kind of directly sharing elements of their story, they've also kind of had elements of fiction within their books where they're sharing pieces that maybe it's like, actually, I don't want to go there in terms of sharing my personal experience, so I'm going to kind of work with it and create something more fictional. So you can do that as well. Yeah.
Okay. Kind of like the based on a true story.
Yeah, kind of, you know. And that kind of gives you permission to maybe be a bit more out there with it and to, experiment with different aspects of yourself that maybe you don't feel comfortable, like, even acknowledging to yourself, that you can do it in the fictional realm. So I love that way of playing with it.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's
great.
It feels really playful, hearing you talk about it. And just when I was listening to you speak about it, Nicola, it felt really freeing. You know, like, I feel a lot of things, I'm very clairsentient in that way. It felt very freeing in my whole body. And I was wondering if you could talk more about that in terms of the process of being an unbound writer. Like, for some, you know, like, let's say for our listeners or budding authors, what does it look like, or what does it feel like to write in an unbound way? I mean, it's so liberating.
Yeah, it is. And, you know, I always encourage people to write for themselves first. So even if you know that you are working on a book and that's, you know, what you're writing, it's almost to kind of let go of that part of it and just really allow yourself to be in this space where you are allowing what wants to come through you. And, you know, whenever that feels challenging, or it feels like there's nothing coming through, you know, whatever is happening, that's all absolutely perfect. Like, rather than judging it and making it mean, oh, I'm obviously not meant to do this, I'm not a writer because I don't feel inspired today. It's like, no, this is actually a natural part of the process. So kind of allowing all of it rather than having these set ideas of how it should be, and kind of knowing that it's all perfect. And, you know, that's what I'm really passionate about holding space for. Because I've experienced it and do experience it myself, and I've seen how, you know, certainly when I was writing my second book, Unbound, at times it just felt like such a mess, and I really had to live that book as I was writing it. And there were times when I didn't write really for weeks or months even. But, you know, then the inspiration would come back and it cycles back round. So, yeah, a big piece of this, and again, it kind of translates into life as a whole, is to be in this place of allowing and trusting that whatever you're experiencing, whatever you feel called to express, it is exactly what you need to do in that moment.
So do you write something every day, or do you just kind of allow that to be?
It depends. It depends what I'm working on. If I'm working on a book, I won't necessarily write every single day, but I might have periods of time where I do make that commitment to writing every day for a period of time. I mean, a big part of the Unbound writing process is that you write in alignment with your cyclical nature. And the truth is,
beautiful.
You know, we are cyclical beings, so you're not going to feel like writing like in this really inspired and flowing way every single day. You need to allow space. You need to have the days when actually it's all happening under the surface and it's not happening on the page, and that's fine. And there are other times when you're more in planning mode and times when you're in editing mode. So it's allowing all of that rather than feeling you have to show up in the same way. But I work with this idea, divine discipline, because I've always resisted discipline. It's like, oh, it's just really heavy and like someone's forcing me to do something. And when I was writing Unbound, this idea of divine discipline, which is like invoking the power of discipline in service to something greater. So I have periods of time where it's like, okay, I'm going to write every day I write in short bursts, so I would only ever say like maybe 30 minutes a day. I'll make that commitment for a period of time, and it will be this practice of divine discipline, just to create a bit of momentum at different stages of the writing journey. But yeah, I'm never really rigid around that. And in terms of writing for myself, just journaling, I will normally be writing something every day. But again, there are some days where it's like, actually, no, I don't feel called to the page today. So I don't have this rigid expectation that I'll do that.
Ooh, that's so freeing.
Yeah.
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 and I you know what, I just like all my senses were just going like this when you were talking about working in a cyclical way, because that's, I mean, obviously that's, I feel like that is the new paradigm in the sort of the new consciousness that we're moving into. And also Morgan and I run the Replenishing Life project in that way. We work with the moon phases, we work with different planetary phases that's going on. And a couple of years ago people would have said, well, that's very woo-woo, it's a very woo-woo way of working. But actually that whole idea of that, the moon expands and contracts, and you can't be in a period of expansion all the time. So I love that reflection. I
think that point about kind of a natural contraction that happens after expansion is really important, because I've experienced this personally, and also with clients, is we can be in this really creative phase where it's like, oh my goodness, like everything's happening and I've cracked it. I'm just so in the flow, and there can be this expectation that will continue. And actually when we start to experience that natural contraction, which is necessary, we need that, we can go into this place of judgment, like, oh, I thought this time it was different and I'd like really found my voice and my flow, and now it feels like everything's kind of dried up again. It's like, no, it's what you need. You need those times where there is that space, and that when we kind of go into the void, I think that's just an important part of the creative process, as the times when we're really kind of in inspired action.
Totally agree. I'm interested in so like when I tune into creativity or my creative inspiration, I find that I actually do that best through music. So I'm interested in hearing from you, what are some of the ritual that you have, or some of the ways that you like to tune in and just receive?
For me, movement's really important, and nature. So generally, before I write, or if I feel like I want to get the inspiration moving, I'll go out for a walk. I mean, I tend to go out for a walk in nature most days. Really important part of kind of my practice. But that's what does it for me. I mean, I could be at my desk, like working away, trying to make it happen. As soon as I stand up, very often as soon as I walk outside the door, just creating that space and starting to move and being outside, something will drop in. So that is, so important for me. And this is the thing, and I think it kind of applies to any kind of creativity. Like writing doesn't always look like just writing. Just because we're not actually physically writing doesn't mean we're not kind of in that creative process. So whether it's like dancing to music or whatever it is, it's all part of it.
Oh, I love that. And that goes back to what you were mentioning earlier, that I feel like that just because we're not writing on there's still something's going on underneath, underneath, which is amazing. And it really kind of, puts it into a different perspective of, and it's not necessarily, about productivity and putting it out there and having to do this day by day. It's like, it's more of a feminine approach of that.
I think we need to redefine productivity. What does that mean? For me, it used to mean like productivity would be times when I was at my desk, working in a more traditional sense. But actually what I've come to realize, both through running my own business and through the writing process is, we can be productive in lots of different ways. And sometimes that might, the most productive thing you can do is actually be taking a nap or, I run, in my Unbound Writing Mastermind, we have group writing sessions, and I open up the space and then people say what they're going to do. They have an hour of time. And I love that sometimes there'll be someone who's like, actually, I'm going to go and take a nap, or I'm going to go and meditate. And it's like, well, that's still part of the writing process, because that's what you need to do. It's not that you have to sit there with your pen or your laptop and just kind of be writing for like the whole time. All of these things are productive.
Love it. Love it. So I have a question for you. So can you tell us from your experience as an author and a publisher, how you've seen the world change when women in particular share their story or their stories?
Yeah. I mean, for me, I think the world changes. There's kind of different layers to that. So I'm really passionate about the process of sharing our stories, and specifically writing a book being a transformative experience in itself, like for us. So when we share our story, particularly like Morgan, like you said, if it feels challenging, that creates that changes our world. It shifts something for us, because we're allowing a part of us and our experience to be seen in a way that maybe it hasn't been done before. So it changes our own world. It also changes the world of whoever gets to like read that or see it. I think this is part of my human design, which I was so grateful to learn about from you, Lucy, when we were in Glastonbury. I get so inspired by other people. I need that input from other people. So when I hear somebody else share their story, that activates something within me. So it changes the world of whoever gets to read our words or hear us speaking about our story. So it changes the world in that sense. But also, I feel when we give ourselves permission to speak our truth and to share our story, the impact of that, it ripples out into the collective and into the world in that way. And it can create changes that we're not even aware of. But yeah, it just shifts the energy, which is like really like so incredibly powerful. And I think we're experiencing that more and more. Well, I'm certainly recognizing it more and more, how the things we do and how we show up, the impact goes way beyond like what we actually see directly.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I agree too. Yeah. Nice.
I kind of got tingles.
Yeah, same. I'm like, oh, amazing.
Yeah. And that can actually give us like the courage to like for me, that kind of makes me feel okay, even if it does feel risky or scary to share something. I'm gonna do it, because it's not just having an impact on me and the people that I'm surrounded by, like in my immediate connections, but I know that it's rippling out into the collective. Our stories are so important, and people sorry, I really get passionate about this, you know, and particularly women haven't always, and still in the world, there are women and, you know, all kind of humans who are not able to share their stories. You know, it is actually really dangerous for them to do that. So I feel if we are able to, there's this sense of responsibility that we do that.
Wow. Agree. Yeah. I hear you on that so strongly. I mean, and also just what you were saying there, for me, that brings it back to, you know, what you were talking about with divine discipline being directly related to divine service as well. You know, hearing that, I started getting tingles because I was like, you know, that's the thing, it's to get out of your own way. And that's, I think, one of the biggest hurdles is to actually move out of your own way and allow the story to come through. Because as you say, you don't know, and we don't have control over just how powerful an impact that story can have in the world. So exactly. Thank you for that reminder.
Oh, you're welcome. I need to remember it as well. I need to keep reminding myself.
That's definitely a soundbite. Yeah.
You know, so much of this, like I said, it comes up for everyone, and it comes up, doesn't matter how long you've been doing this for, like all of this kind of mind stuff, this ego stuff comes up. So again, I think that's why it's so important for us to kind of come together in this way and be talking about it and kind of letting it out into the open, so it's not so scary anymore.
So Nicola, for our viewers and our listeners, tell us where they can find you. Where can they find you online?
Oh, fantastic. So the best place, I guess, is my website, which is nicolahumber.com. And from there, you can click through to the Unbound Press if you want to explore over there. But also on Instagram, that's my favourite place to hang out on social. So I'm at Nicola Humber. Find me over there. I'd love to connect with you.
Wonderful. And so we'd like to ask you, which we ask all our guests, is what replenishes you?
For me, it's connection, which is and connection with other people, which is really interesting because I'm an introvert, and I always had this story that, oh no, I'm not good with people, you know, and certainly that I couldn't express myself very well. I would always be kind of the quiet one on the outskirts. But what shifted for me, like in particular over the past few years, is recognizing, no, that's what actually, it kind of fuels me, this connection with others. Yeah, again, I think it is part of my human design as well. But yeah, certainly connecting with people who are on this kind of similar unbound or unbinding path. Yeah, that's what replenishes me, definitely.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Nicola, for being with us today and sharing all these beautiful words and of wisdom and all this guidance for all of our listeners to really you know, free themselves from anything that's keeping them bound or unable to express themselves. So thank you so much for connecting with us, all of us today, and for sharing that. And we really appreciate that you are part of this experience with us. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. And thank you both for doing this work. And yeah, inviting me to have this conversation. It's just been such a pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
If you'd like to learn more about Nicola Humber, you can go to nicolahumber.com, follow her on Instagram at Nicola Humber, and join her Facebook page, Nicola Humber, where she talks all things writing, self-expression, and embracing your magnificence. For more information on classes, meditations, and community events to help you replenish your life, and to sign up to receive bi-monthly transformational content, check out bit.ly/replenishing life. You can also find us by searching for Replenishing Life Project on Instagram, Facebook, and YouTube. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe and leave a review for the Replenish Your Life podcast. In our next episode, we're talking to creative entrepreneur Keris Mooney, all about how knowing your archetypes can guide you back to the truth of who you really are and the power of your authenticity.